In about 1 billion years from today, life on Earth will be facing an extinction threat that makes anything before it look like nothing by comparison. For the first time in Earth's history, the complete and utter destruction of all life is not only possible, but inevitable, as the sun gradually warms up. Plate tectonics have come to an end, locking Earth's surface forever. The carbon cycle has also been disrupted, leading to massive drops on CO2 on a scale never before seen that stops photosynthesis worldwide. The entire biosphere has collapsed from the bottom up, and a runaway evaporation event in the oceans is occurring, draining the Earth's water supply until there's nothing left. Our planet has been doomed to slowly warm up until, in about 7 billion years, its molten ashes are slowly consumed and destroyed by the red giant sun. Earth is dying, and there's absolutely nothing anyone can do about it. Or is there? Welcome to the 4th episode of my Halcyonic Systems series, where I talk about various systems and their planets around dying stars. If you don't know, a halcyonic system is a term I use to describe any planetary system orbiting a dead or dying star, like a red giant, white dwarf, or a neutron star. By 1 billion years in the future, the sun won't actually be a red giant, it will still be well within the main sequence phase. So this is stretching the term a bit. Because Earth will be dying in this video, I felt the name still made sense. But anyway, this episode will be a tour of Earth 1 to 1.2 billion years in the future. We'll be assuming a few things for this video, most importantly being this is what Earth will be like without human influence. We'll be assuming that humanity does nothing to save Earth, or maybe has gone extinct a long time before this. I personally don't think humanity is going extinct anytime soon, and some form of life that can trace its ancestry back to humanity will be around 1 billion years from now, but for this video, we'll assume there won't be. This is Earth's death as nature intended it. Just be aware there are scientifically possible things humanity can do to save Earth from this fate, which I'll talk about in later videos. I should also mention that the future of Earth isn't very well defined. We do know the general things that will happen around 1 billion years from now, but we don't know things like what Earth's land masses will look like at this point, or what whatever surviving life will be like. We can barely predict the weather more than a month in advance, so predicting the environment of an entire planet 1 billion years in the future is extremely difficult, so any predictions will necessarily be vague. Whenever I mention something hypothetical, I'll say that it is. With that out of the way, welcome to Earth 1 billion years in the future. Viewing what's left of Earth from space, it already looks like an uninhabitable desert, with forests long gone. Most types of photosynthesis are estimated to be impossible around this time thanks to the disruption of the carbon cycle, leaving plants with no CO2 to use. There are, however, still some type of plants that exist today that can survive in this low CO2 environment, but being about 1 billion years in the future, we have no idea what types of plants might have evolved. However, it's a safe assumption that most of Earth is a dry desert, with only small pockets of plants left, if any. Most of the oceans are gone too. By this point, around 27% of Earth's current seawater reserves have been subducted into the mantle through now-dead tectonic activity, and the rest is mostly evaporated into the stratosphere where it's blasted away by the increasing solar wind. Most of Earth's surface is covered with sand dunes and salt flat from what used to be the ocean floor, resulting in one giant landmass covering everywhere but the North and South Pole, which we'll get to later. Exactly how this landmass, which can't really be called a continent anymore, will look like is unknown, but it's likely that around now, most of Earth's surface will be land. We don't know what this landmass will look like, we just know that at some point 1 billion years in the future, there will be land where the oceans used to be. I'll be calling this landmass Telagea, coming from the Greek word telos, meaning the end or completion of something. So, end of Earth. Telagea, Earth's last landmass, covers most of our planet. The equator and the lands near it are uninhabitable, and Earth's average surface temperature is over 116 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 46 degrees Celsius. Because of the end of tectonic activity, craters have slowly begun to build up as Earth's surface no longer changes much. However, there is still volcanic activity, though it's more limited than it is today. The only volcanoes left on Earth will be above mantle hotspots, and be shield volcanoes, similar to the Tharsis region on Mars. Mars itself is covered in giant extinct volcanoes, like Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. Olympus Mons only got as big as it did because Mars didn't have any tectonic activity, so the hotspot that produced Olympus Mons just kept erupting in the same spot over and over until the volcano built up to the size it is today. With tectonic activity gone on Earth, the same process could occur, though at a smaller scale because of Earth's higher gravity limiting how tall volcanoes can get. The volcanoes also wouldn't have much time to build up, but over the next few billion years, they could get extremely large. What the atmosphere will be like is a mystery, but it depends on how fast the oceans evaporate. If they evaporate slowly, a runaway greenhouse effect could begin, but if they evaporate quickly, Earth will enter a humid greenhouse state. Either way, surface water is on its way out, and almost none of it remains. Telagea absolutely dominates the entire surface of Earth. But even still, life has a chance. In the North and South Poles, it's very possible that Earth's last water could still exist in massive polar seas similar to the methane seas on Titan today. The exact quantity of this water depends on how fast our oceans evaporate, as well as the elevations of the poles. If we got unlucky and the North and South Poles a billion years from now are areas of high elevation, then the polar seas will be smaller and more divided, since water will flow off of it and into the hotter areas. But if the poles have lower elevation, like large basins, then it's possible that bodies of water bordering on oceans could exist. The amount of water left on Earth to fill up the poles obviously matters a lot too, and could change these polar bodies of water from small collections of ponds to oceans. I'll keep it simple and call them seas for this video, but just remember they could be anything from small collections of lakes to one giant body of water, or small ponds carved up in the mountains, or any number of potential configurations. Regardless of what these places look like, Earth's North and South Poles will be some of the last bastions for surface water on Earth. So, just like Telagea, I'll be naming these seas the North Telelassic Sea and the South Telelassic Sea, from telos and thalassa, meaning sea. So, the North End Sea and South End Sea. The telelassics at the poles will be the best places for any surviving life to live, away from the scorching equator. However, life will still have a hard time, especially on the surface. Because most plant life has died off, not only do any surviving herbivores no longer have good food sources, but the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere is rapidly decreasing. However, many species, like certain types of grass today, use C4 photosynthesis, which means they could survive anywhere from 800 million to almost 2 billion years from today. But no matter how much grass there is, it's estimated that Earth's oxygen content 1 billion years from now will be just 1% of the level it's at today. That's nowhere near enough to support the amount of complexity Earth has today, and any remaining multicellular organisms will likely be very small. But that's not the only problem the last life has to deal with. Because surface life is essentially extinct by now, there's a severe lack of nutrients from the surface entering the telelassic seas, making life extremely hard in them. This is because there's no life on the surface dying and falling into the oceans, or being carried into them through rivers. The poles have another problem too, and that's that they have 6 months of constant day and 6 months of night. At least they currently do. Earth's axial tilt over extremely long periods of time is chaotic. In about 1.5 to 4.5 billion years from today, the tilt could be up to 90 degrees, compared to the 23 degrees it is today. I can't find any good sources for what the axial tilt will be like at 1 billion years, but it could very well be more drastic than it is today, meaning the poles could be stuck in total darkness and then in constant daylight for months on end. This means that surviving life could have to hibernate during the day and only be active at night, making survival an incredibly difficult thing to do. Low oxygen, lack of nutrients, polar days that last 6 months, inhospitable temperatures, and a runaway greenhouse effect only scratch the surface of the challenges Earth's last life will have to face to survive. It's not an exaggeration to say that all life except for bacteria might be extinct by this point, but there are still ways life could survive. The evolutionary pressures present on this Earth would force life to adapt or go extinct. Life could do everything from hibernate to move underground to even things like form mutual relationships with surviving fungi or escape into the atmosphere, leaving the land and sea behind entirely and surviving off the water vapor in the air. This is actually a possibility for how life on Venus might have survived, if it was even habitable in the past. But we don't have conclusive evidence that Venus has life, or was ever capable of supporting it, so it's unknown how fully aerial life would survive, if it's even possible. The ecosystems based around the telelassic seas will be like nothing we have on Earth today, that much we can say for sure. But they most likely will, by far, be the largest ecosystems left on the dying Earth, but there's still areas where life could migrate to create their last homes. Underground cave systems in high-altitude locations are the only places I can think of where life could still cling to at this point, besides the poles. In the cavern systems below Telagea, water could survive, as well as areas near volcanoes where exotic forms of life could have energy to use. In fact, because Earth's surface is now much more stable, with no tectonic activity moving things around, underground water reserves will likely outlast the telelassic bodies of water on the poles, thanks to their isolated environments. But they'll likely have the same lack of nutrients problem as the poles. Life could also flee to the skies, surviving on what high-altitude volcanoes and mountains remain, where temperatures could also be cool enough for liquid water, or leaving the surface behind entirely and surviving off the water vapor coming from the dying oceans. Despite how many ways life could survive, at least for a while, the death of Earth is unavoidable for them. Eventually, the growing sun will scorch away the last of the telelassic seas and high-altitude mountain lakes, and the ever-increasing isolation of the underground will eventually lead to the total lack of nutrients, killing everything that chose to go deeper to survive. Eventually, as the water vapor makes it up to the stratosphere, it's separated into hydrogen and oxygen by the solar wind, eventually making Earth as dry as Venus. With no photosynthetic life left, or tectonic activity trapping it underground, carbon dioxide will begin to build up because of volcanic activity at an ever-increasing rate, until eventually Earth becomes another Venus. A dry, uninhabitable surface covered by a carbon dioxide atmosphere so dense you might as well call it an ocean. But before all this, there's one last place we have to look at: the moon. For all of history, the moon has been in Earth's sky, and it's almost entirely unchanged by this point, assuming humans didn't colonize or terraform it in this 1 billion year timeline. The only major change on the moon is the temperature increase, as well as it now having more craters and being further away from Earth. Total solar eclipses are now impossible on Earth thanks to the moon naturally drifting away, but the moon's unchanging environment is a great place to watch the destruction of life from above. Earth 1 billion years in the future is at an important turning point in our planet's history, right between the time where it's habitable and the time when it's not. The Earth I describe in this video won't last long, maybe only a few 100 million years at the absolute maximum. It's a transitionary period, and the last time in our history Earth will ever be habitable to life. Sure, life may have other chances, fleeting moments on Mars as it warms up, or it may take refuge on Titan and Ganymede once the sun really becomes a full red giant. But none of these places will ever be as perfect for life as Earth is now, and when Earth dies, the vast majority of chances for life will go with it. The telelastic seas will be the last bodies of water life will ever call home, Telagea the last landmass it'll ever see. It's the era of last habitability, the last time life will ever call Earth home. This is a bleak future for our planet, and it's inevitable. Or is it? I said at the beginning of this video that there are ways to prevent this future for Earth. I originally wanted to include them in this video, but I've decided it's better to have it as its own video, which I may publish sometime soon. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, check out my other videos about space.